everyone, and thank you very much for joining us for yet another edition of Leveraging Artificial Intelligence for Organizational Strategy here on Amogi Radio Communications. This beautiful third Monday of November 2025, November 17, 2025. Have you been? Hope you had a weekend, and we warmly welcome you to another insightful, instructive, illuminating session on Amogi Radio Communications. I remain your host, Tolu Omder, saying welcome. As always, we're going to start by, taking some quick highlights from some of the things we discussed last week. And last week, we were looking at using artificial intelligence for innovation. I repeat, using artificial intelligence for innovation. And we're looking at the second part of that stream, right? Having looked at the first, right, of the topic as a way of laying the foundation for the flow we are going to continue with today, right? So last week we pointed out the fact that revolutionary innovation is what we looked more at the previous week, right? That's the penultimate week, right? And revolutionary innovation is one form of innovation. Another one is evolutionary innovation. In other words, the one that evolves, right? Revolutionary innovation is the kind that can disrupt the entire industry. It can reinvent the whole market. It creates strategic models that didn't exist before in your industry. And there is definitely a place for this, right? Revolutionary innovation has a lot to do with unleashing creativity unhindered without thought for executions. I'm going to say that again. Revolutionary innovation has a lot to do with unleashing unhindered creativity without any limits of execution, right? Because when you're thinking about execution, sometimes you have to consider things like, how do we take this to market? How do we profit of this? How do we commercialize this? What's the best model for doing this, right? When it comes to revolutionary innovation, all you're doing is simply creating. You're just unleashing your creativity, and there is definitely a place for that. However, innovation is not just creativity. Creativity has to do with coming up with new ideas, but innovation definitely includes the commercialization of that creative thought, right? The commercialization of that creation. So we are thinking about innovation, or we are talking about innovation, we often refer to it as a path from conceptualization all the way to commercialization. I repeat, from conceptualization all the way to commercialization. So while revolutionary innovation can be very unhindered, sometimes when it comes to profiting off that thought, right, that creative thought, that creation, right, you have to think a little bit more evolutionarily. And evolutionary innovation is where you have adaptation, is where you also have iterations, right? So you have an initial creation, and then you're then adapting it based on market feedback, based on the pulse that you can feel. And this is where artificial intelligence comes in, right? Taking innovation from conceptualization all the way to commercialization, like we said last week, typically involves a lot of iterations and adaptation, and artificial intelligence help you go from creation to profitization. How does this do this? Now, when you talk about evolutionary innovation, like I said, it can be very iterative, and that's why you have maybe version 10 of your Samsung phone or of your Apple device, right? Because there have been iterations based on market feedback, right? Now, artificial intelligence helps to accelerate that process of analyzing broad and complex, I can almost say avalanche of data, right? Because in today's world, like we've said severally on this program, you don't just have high velocity and high variety data, you also have a lot of high volume data, right? You have huge resources of data, and that is just data in its raw state, information in its raw state. But artificial intelligence can help you to process that information, right? That huge high volume, high variety, high velocity data is something that the human intellect cannot process as speedily as artificial intelligence. Of course, artificial intelligence still being led by human intelligence. So human intelligence can help you with the evolutionary innovation and the commercialization of that creation by helping to glean insights from the massive amount of data available for adaptation. Very, very important, right? Because when you talk about reiteration, you are basically doing an adaptation of your initial creations, right? And artificial intelligence can help you do this much more speedily than the human mind can, right? Of course, the human mind is still the one leading the artificial intelligence tools, right? Artificial intelligence is being programmed, the algorithms are being developed by the human mind. But when let's use quote unquote, artificial intelligence can go much more speedily because it's a machine and because it has to be less distractions. Once you program it and you set the algorithm, it can proceed at a significantly high speed. So evolutionary innovation for commercialization has a lot to do with iteration, and artificial intelligence can help you get the nuanced insights you need for from the customer feedback for the necessary iterations, right? The market's necessary innovation iterations, because you're not just, especially when it comes to commercialization of your creative ideas, of your creative output, you are not just doing it to satisfy your creativity hunches, but to ensure that you have acceptability in the market, right? So you need to work with the feedback from the customers, and artificial intelligence can help you get the nuanced insights that you need from the largely unstructured data, largely unstructured information that you can access very freely in today's machine learning world, right? I'm going to say just a couple of more things, and then we're going to go into the first of today. And like we always say, please go back to our page, our YouTube page, Amoge Radio Communications. If you have subscribed, if you're yet to subscribe, please subscribe and invite others to. There's a lot that you have to learn, from this, not just this program, but also from the vast amount of information and huge insights available from strategy to management to economics to global to geopolitics and so many other things that you have a lot to learn from. So we want to encourage you to listen and learn, and even go back to what you think you have heard again, especially when you want to work it out in terms of the implementation requirements. Now, I'll just draw one more thing from last week's episode, and then we go into the first of today's topic. So artificial intelligence can also help you to improve the predictive analytics model that you are going to use to envisage how the market will respond. Let me explain what I mean by that. Now, normally when you get feedback from the market, which artificial intelligence, of course, helps you to process, even that new version, even that iteration, sometimes you still need to take it through a kind of predictive analytics model, which artificial intelligence can help you create. Remember, we had said this in previous episodes of this program, that artificial intelligence is used for predictive analytics as well as prescriptive analytics, right? So there's a lot of historical data, which is where machine learning comes from, right? Machine learning tries to get patterns, do some pattern recognition with the largely unstructured data available to you, right? Now, that's one level, learning from historical data, pattern recognition, trends analysis. But beyond that, right, artificial intelligence also helps you do what is called predictive analytics, right? Based on historical data, you're now trying to predict the next trend, the next wave. And that is where the opportunity lies, because the more accurately you can predict the market needs and, also respond to the market needs and ensure that you are providing creations or iterations of initial creations that respond to the market need, the more likely you will be to profit off your initial creations. Now, all of this is because of a tool or because of an ability, a capability of artificial intelligence, which is predictive analytics. So artificial intelligence can help you to improve the predictive analytics model, because the predictive analytics model is very much improvable, right? It's very much programmable. It's very much subject to iterations itself. And what that predictive analytics model can help you to do is to anticipate how the market will respond to new iterations of the initial creations or even your initial creations. Now, the better you are at improving your predictive analytics model, the more likely you would be to move from conceptualization to commercialization. Well, I think I'm going to stop here as far as the recollections of, or as far as the highlights of last week's edition is concerned, and we're going to move to the thrust for today's program. Once again, I remain your host, Tolu Omodara, warmly welcoming you to Leveraging Artificial Intelligence for Organizational Strategy, episode 6. And today we'll be talking about using artificial intelligence for service innovation. I repeat, using artificial intelligence for service innovation. Now, if you look at the last two episodes, the first one, which dwelt more on revolutionary innovation, and the last week's one, where we dwelt more on evolutionary innovation, you will see that we generally seem to speak more to product innovation, creating new products. We give examples like Apple, we talked about things like creating softwares, but we now want to talk about service innovation. Even though softwares, of course, can be used for service, softwares themselves are essentially a product on their own. But our focus this week is on service innovation. Why are we saying this? Because service is a huge market. The service market is a huge market. We talk about health services, financial services. A lot is being reinvented these days with artificial intelligence, and there's a lot of opportunity for you as an organization to leverage artificial intelligence to create more value for your clients and your stakeholders through artificial intelligence. But before we begin to talk about how you can use artificial intelligence for service innovation, let's go back to what exactly artificial intelligence is, right? Let's remind ourselves of what artificial intelligence means. Remember, artificial intelligence is about getting machines to behave with human-like intelligence. I repeat, artificial intelligence is getting machines to behave with human-like intelligence, right? When you see traditional analytical models or traditional analytical methods now, more or less like quote unquote upping their game and giving the kind of pattern recognition that you would normally not get from traditional methods. Usually it is artificial intelligence at work, right? Don't ever forget that. So artificial intelligence is about getting robots to behave in a manner that mirrors human-like intelligence. So when you're talking about thinking about what artificial intelligence can do as far as more or less creating service innovations is concerned, you have to ask yourself, how can I get this machine to think like a human being and to suggest newer models of service offerings? I'm going to say that again, is asking yourself, how can I get this machine to think like an intelligent human being in order to create newer models, right, of this service offering? Now, I'll give just two examples of areas where artificial intelligence is currently leading to, service innovation. And then from there, we can begin to talk about how you can apply this to your own businesses, right? Your own organizations. Now, one of these, of course, is the healthcare services, right? The healthcare services, have a lot of artificial intelligence enablement for healthcare innovation, right? In healthcare, we now have artificial intelligence assisted analytics that are helping to ensure patients' care goes into more level of personalized treatment and even more effective and more accurate prognostic diagnosis. Now, don't forget that anytime you hear artificial intelligence, remember it's about going through large amounts of data. Artificial intelligence does not get the idea on its own, but artificial intelligence is very permit me to use that personification of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is very good at processing large amounts of data, extremely large amounts of data, high volume, high variety, high velocity data. What is it looking for? It's looking for patterns, right? And that's where machine learning comes in, and that's where deep learning also comes in. It's trying to unlayer the nuances, right? It's trying to dive deep. Remember, data can come in very unstructured forms. And let me give you simple examples. Sometimes you have different comments, right? You go online and you see a post, or you see an advert for a product, or you even see a request for customer feedback, right, on a particular channel, and you have a huge amount of data from customer feedback. Now, those customers have not sat down to discuss how exactly they are going to give the feedback. Many times it can be very untemplated, if I can use that word. There's no template to the data they are putting together. So it then becomes the work of artificial intelligence to think like a human being and begin to find some structure within the unstructured data. Now, when artificial intelligence does this, it makes the process easier for you, the process of identifying the patterns. That's why we keep talking about pattern recognition. When artificial intelligence can draw a pattern, artificial intelligence can also move from that to its predictive analytics function. There's a pattern recognition function with artificial intelligence. There's also the predictive analytics function. Pattern recognition, of course, deals more with historical data that has already been created from customer feedback, largely unstructured customer feedback. Artificial intelligence then goes beyond that to begin to say, based on this, we are predicting. Artificial intelligence has that capability to go beyond that to say, based on these patterns that have been recognized, based on these patterns that have been more or less drawn or created, have been identified, we are predicting that this set of customers, these customers that fall into this demographic categorization or into this demographic class, are more likely to need this kind of treatment. So artificial intelligence has been used, right, through things like machine learning, things like predictive analytics. They have been used to elevate patient care through more personalized treatment models, and it has led to more effective, more accurate prognostic diagnosis, right? Again, like I will always say, this is not coming from nowhere. It is coming from the data, the human-fed data. It is still humans that feed the machines with the data, but the machines have been programmed by human beings to identify patterns, to decomplex, so to say, right, the unstructured data, because unstructured data can be very complex. There's no template to it, but the machines, through algorithms, have been programmed to, take that largely unstructured, massive data and to bring some structure to it that then begins to categorize different patients based on demographic tendencies, right? For instance, female versus male, older versus younger, middle age, and so on and so forth. Even sometimes races, right? These Asians, Africans, and that's why many times when when you're being attended to, usually you'll be asked to indicate those things, those demographic information at the back end are used for better pattern recognition. I'll say that again, demographic information many times at the back end are used for better pattern recognition. Now, the essence of these, right, when it comes to artificial intelligence and service innovation, is to help to create more customized healthcare service, offerings that can meet the needs of different categories of patients and also even lead to more accurate prognostic diagnosis. I'll give one more example of another industry where artificial intelligence is leading to service innovation, and then we begin to talk about how you can, leverage this for your own service innovation in your organizations. Another one, of course, is in the financial services, right? So in the financial services, artificial intelligence and machine learning, the machine learning function of artificial intelligence, amongst others, is being used to enhance risk appraisal, right? Many times in financial services, when you're dealing with investment, one of the things you want to do is to accurately assess risk or assess risk as accurately as possible, right? Sometimes you cannot have 100% accuracy with risk assessment, but you want to approximate perfection or near perfection when it comes to risk assessment. Now, artificial intelligence has been used to ensure a more effective, more accurate analysis and prediction of risks, right? Including fraud detection, and so on and so forth. Now, what does this do? This helps to increase confidence in the financial service offering. It's very important, right? Because what the machine does, again, it looks at historical data, it looks at previous instances of fraud, it looks at times when risks were accurately predicted versus times when there was less accuracy with the risk prediction, it looks at the patterns, what was common, what were the factors that were common in the cases where there were better risk prediction versus those that were associated with poorer risk prediction, looks at the trends, looks at the common factors, and then based on this begins to do predictions, right? Remember, it's about using historical data, trends analysis, pattern recognitions for more effective predictive analytics. So those are two instances, giving an example of the healthcare industry and now the financial services industry, where artificial intelligence can be used to provide innovative services or to provide services in an innovative manner. So today we are looking at using artificial intelligence for service innovation, and we looked at some examples, and then we'll be going on to talk more about how you can use this in whatever industry you may be. We'll take a quick break and then we'll be back shortly. Thank you.
Harmogate, founded in 2008 out of a desire to build transgenerational structures for organizations, institutions, and nations. We have worked with large businesses, international development organizations, and public sector ministries and agencies. Harmogate, our uniqueness is that we do not just work for you, we work with you. For example, we do not leave you to the task after sourcing talent that will help the new hire settle into robust leadership development programs. We are technical experts in advising and supporting institutions on strategy and leadership, artificial intelligence, strategic human resource management, public sector reform, finance, audit and tax, FAT, and strategic communications. We do all this and more out of a desire to transform nations through institutions and organizations. For further inquiries, email contact@theharmogate.org or call +234 810 999 6666, +234 807 957 4151, and +161 0504 6026. www.theharmogate.org. Harmogate, building to endure and transforming nations through institutions and organizations.
Hello and welcome back to this episode, the 6th episode of Leveraging Artificial Intelligence for Organizational Strategy on Amoge Radio Communications. I remain your host, Tolu Madara, warmly welcoming you back. And today, remember, we are looking at using artificial intelligence for service innovation, right? And we're still looking at, the different functions and capabilities of artificial intelligence and how they can be used to deliver innovative services or to deliver services in an innovative manner. Now, when it comes to innovation, one of the things you want to remember is that it's always about either doing new things or doing things in a different manner. I'm going to say that again. When it comes to innovation, remember, you're always looking at either doing new things or delivering services that appear to be the same, but in a different manner, geared towards meeting the customer's needs. So let's look at how artificial intelligence can help this. Remember, artificial intelligence has functions like machine learning, like deep learning, like natural language processing. I want to talk a little bit about natural language processing. Like I was saying earlier, a lot of times the feedback that you get from your customers can come in a very unstructured manner. But artificial intelligence has a natural language processing capability that can help you bring some structure to the quote unquote the mess of data, right? So you have mass data, and sometimes it's like a mess of data. The mess there meaning there is no template, there is no structure, right? But with that natural language processing, especially when you are now programming the algorithm to identify unmet needs or points of dissatisfaction, especially those that have the highest level of recurrence, right? It can help you to identify the gaps in the service provision. Very, very important. You're not trying to meet a need that is already met. That's not innovation. If you're trying to do the same thing in exactly the same manner, you're not doing a new thing, right? Doing a new thing, providing innovative services or providing services in an innovative manner has to do with meeting the needs of the customer, especially the service needs of the customer in a different manner, right? So when you want to do this, you want to use artificial intelligence to identify the gaps, right? The gaps in the customer's needs. Because you'll be saying, oh, I'm not a financial services industry. That example doesn't apply to me. I'm not a healthcare service professional, or I'm not the leader of a healthcare service organization. How does this apply to me? Whatever your industry is, whatever service you're providing, you should, let me start with that, you should be getting feedback from your clients. There should be a simple form they can fill online that, in fact, if necessary, you encourage them to fill with incentives, maybe a reduced price, a discount here and there. It's very important for you to get candid feedback, right? And current feedback as well, because sometimes you have feedback that is stale. And remember, we live in a very rapidly changing world. So you want to get candid and current feedback, and you want to get it in as much volume as possible. And artificial intelligence can help you using natural language processing to identify recurring gaps based on your customers' feedback, whatever the industry you are in. Right, artificial intelligence using its natural language processing can help you to process massive amounts of data and identify the gaps, the service gaps. What are your customers complaining about? I can give the example of hospitality industry, right? If you're in the hospitality industry, you want to look at the feedback. What exactly is happening? I think just about 2 days ago or yesterday, I was reading about a hotel chain that had merged with Marriott. Marriott, I believe, is currently the biggest global hospitality chain. And this chain that had more or less been acquired by Marriott, they had its relationship with Marriott severed, and I think is declared bankruptcy. Now, hotels is a largely service-based industry. After a while, there's really not much difference from room to room, but what you can differentiate strongly around is your service. I don't know what went wrong, but I can imagine that there would have been feedback. A lot of times, there's a massive amount of feedback across different platforms on the services that clients are receiving, that customers are receiving. Artificial intelligence can help you process this feedback. Right? Artificial intelligence can help you get the feedback to start with. How? Chat boxes, virtual assistants. It is extremely important. Like I said, I also think, remember, this is leveraging artificial intelligence for organizational strategy. Artificial intelligence is not going to eliminate the strategy part for you. We've talked about that in previous episodes. You still have to lead. You still have to think. Well, the things you want to do is how do you use artificial intelligence first to get the necessary feedback, then to process the feedback. Artificial intelligence using things like virtual assistants and chatbots can be used to encourage, a higher how will I put it now? A higher level of willingness from the customers to give feedback. It's very important. Whatever incentives you need to create, you want to use artificial intelligence tools to encourage the giving of feedback and to also process that feedback. We've talked a lot about the processing of the feedback through things like machine learning, pattern recognition, natural language processing, but we also have to talk about the eliciting of the feedback to start with. I'm not compelled as a customer to give you feedback. My feedback is a gift, right? So how do you want to ensure that as much as possible you incentivize the giving of that feedback? This is something you can do through virtual assistants, through chatbots. In fact, if possible, create animations of those chat boxes. I was watching a video yesterday or so, and they had this very beautiful animation, this very beautiful quote unquote lady that was delivering the video. And the lady was delivering it, this lady quote unquote, because this is an artificial creation, right? But this lady was delivering it in a very endearing manner that made you want to listen more. So how do we use artificial intelligence to first of all get the feedback we need to identify the market gaps, the service gaps? Because innovation begins with identifying the gaps in the service offerings, right? Now we're talking about service innovation today, so we're not talking about product innovation. So within the context of service innovation, it's first of all about identifying the gaps. But before we even talk about processing the data, the customer data, you also want to use artificial intelligence to elicit the feedback and to incentivize the sharing of that feedback by your customers. Very, very important. Now, of course, after you have gotten the feedback, using artificial intelligence with virtual assistants, chat boxes, visual friendly, quote unquote, human-like communicators. They are not humans, but they are designed like humans, right? After you have done your best to get the feedback, you now want to, of course, use artificial intelligence to process that feedback in a way that is designed to get the different nuances of your different customer categories. So when you have used virtual assistants, chatbots, and so on and so forth to try to get feedback from them as much as possible, of course, in addition to the traditional online survey forms and so on and so forth, you also want to use artificial intelligence, specifically deep learning, to process the significantly large amounts of unstructured data that can come, right? So that data, especially when you use deep learning to unlayer the nuances, can help to enhance your business intelligence, right? Even your competition intelligence, right? Because sometimes it's not just about creating something new. You also want to know what your competition is doing effectively that you want to improve upon, right? That may be a gap within your own offering. Remember, we are talking about service innovation here, innovating in your service. Now, another thing you want to know, still talking about artificial intelligence, specifically deep learning, right? You also want to know that deep learning algorithms can help you to process customer reviews, social media sentiment, and of course, online behavior tips, so to say, because like I said, these are largely unstructured data, but you can get some structure out of them using artificial intelligence tools and artificial intelligence capabilities like deep learning, right? All of these things can help you look at the gaps in service that give you an opportunity for service innovation, either what is not existing at all, but or in the spirit of evolutionary innovation, what you are doing that you probably need to do more of, or what your competition is even doing. Because sometimes when you go and process this data, when AI helps you to process this data, you will see your customers saying, oh, I wish they could do this, they did this well, but this is where the gaps are, right? Many times when we work with service organizations, we sometimes, especially when we help them to strengthen their customer feedback processes, one of the things you see is that sometimes even the competition intelligence can be gotten from the information, from the data that you have in your customer reviews, right? But like I said, many times this comes in unstructured format, and that's where you need artificial intelligence to help you bring some templates to that largely unstructured data, right? You can get a lot of competition intelligence, business intelligence, understanding of what is missing in your own offering, or what's even largely missing on the market, just by analyzing this information from customer reviews, from online feedback, from online conversations, and so on and so forth. Well, we're going to throw just one more and then we'll call it a day for today. So one thing artificial intelligence can also be used to do in terms of service innovation is to analyze the if I would say, the potential for future possibilities in service, right? Because I just alluded to it, sometimes customers can give you a peep. In fact, as a matter of fact, many times customers can give you a peep into what they are desiring, right? Here, I need to go a little bit back to product innovation, even though today is about service innovation, right? There were times when we had phones that, for instance, couldn't record, and based on customer feedback, the phone manufacturers knew that there was a need. There were times we also had laptops and we had phones, and people wanted something in between where they could write. Based on customer feedback, they were able to identify that they wanted tablets, right? And there's so many examples of such that we have, but the bottom line is that artificial intelligence can also help you identify what can be, not just what is, right, but what can be in terms of service innovation. Don't forget, innovation is about doing what has not been done before, or doing what is being currently done in a different way, and doing it from conceptualization all the way to commercialization, right? We've talked about that process of evolutionary innovation that gets you to the point of commercialization, where you must be able to have several iterations. But here, we're talking about identifying service gaps, using AI to identify service gaps, the needs of the customers, the gaps in the market, even the nuances that you need to pick from what competition is doing, that your customer reviews are giving you for free, but largely in the form of unstructured data, which artificial intelligence can help you bring pattern recognition to, right? Using machine learning, natural language processing, and of course, also deep learning capability. Thank you very much for doing this with us. It's been a joy, it's been a pleasure, it's been a delight walking you through service innovation using artificial intelligence for service innovation on the 6th edition of Leveraging Artificial Intelligence for Organizational Strategy on Amogiri Radio Communications. Remember, we're going to have great programs from tomorrow all the way to Friday. Different hosts will be coming with different highly insightful and illuminating programs to help you, guide you through organizational strategy, management, even public sector effectiveness. For me, it is goodbye for today. I'll be back same time, same station next week by God's grace as we continue to explore the topic or the theme of using artificial intelligence to leverage organizational strategy. Thank you very much again and enjoy the rest of your week. Have a good one. Goodbye.